Now then, guys, welcome back to another Cycle Sunday podcast. Paul, my friend, how are you?
Exhausted.
You look so tired, mate. You look so tired.
Spring in the bike shop.
The benefit I get from, I get lots of, we text each other and send each other pictures and stuff. And the new bike shop seems to be going down a storm and you seem to be very busy.
Yes.
But that's not very good for your general physical well-being, is it?
It's fine. Listen, we've got absolutely nothing to moan about. It's very, very busy. We've got great brands supporting us. Customers are amazing. We've still got government guidelines with COVID and that sort of stuff that's being managed properly. But ultimately, it's still really good, and we're seeing so many people getting out on bikes. It's great.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great to hear the shop's going well. I've had so many people reach out since the video dropped last week that had the walk around going, oh my goodness me, I need to get up to Edinburgh, or if they're near you in Edinburgh, they're going to head over and see you and stuff. That's so cool.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I know it's hard work. So I guess one of the things about this podcast is it's a little bit different to the ones that have come before it, because the initial idea behind the podcast, as I'm sure many of you who are regularly tuning in will know, is that we couldn't fit everything into an episode of Cycle Sunday on the Petrolped YouTube channel. So we thought we would come onto a podcast and geek out about all the technical detail.
Yeah.
And tonight's episode on Cycle Sunday on the Petrolped YouTube channel is all about gravel bikes. And we've kind of actually already done a podcast and talked about gravel bikes.
Yeah.
So we're not, this is
so we had an idea basically, which was, because we love doing these podcasts.
I know.
We just absolutely love doing it. And if we weren't doing the podcast, we'd just be phoning each other and talking for an hour anyway. So
yeah, basically. So all we're actually doing is recording a phone conversation every week.
Yes.
And hoping that people find it interesting.
And if they don't, tough. And if you do, just keep listening, because it's fun. It's just really good, and it's all real. And I think it's just real life cycle related stuff that everybody has to go through the journey of, first owning a bike into being an experienced cyclist. We just want to cover all those things and have lovely little anecdotes and just sort of share a bit of wisdom. Yeah. So it's great, and we also have fun while we're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, exactly. We certainly do that.
Yes.
So the subject this evening, actually it was generated. We had a chat and thought it would be a good thing to talk about, and I have had a couple of people ask me questions on this subject.
Yeah,
and that is just generally how you transport your bike from A to B.
Yes,
when you're not riding it. So we thought it'd be quite interesting, because I'm pretty sure, again tapping into your encyclopedic brain when it comes to all things cycling.
Yes.
That there are some fairly major do's and don'ts when it comes to cycling or carrying cycles.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're definitely going to talk about a little bit later on is e-bikes and people needing to carry those around, because they're so much heavier than a normal bike.
Yeah.
So I guess, should we just start, where there's a number of different ways that you can carry your bike on the car.
Yeah.
And then also, depending on the size of your car, you might carry your bike in the car.
Yeah. Correct.
And I know there are definitely people sit in one of those two camps. I know my good friend Joe Achilles is definitely a bike in the car kind of guy. I don't think you couldn't pay him to put a bike on the outside of the car.
Yeah. In fact, he had a video, didn't he, doing the M135i, where he put his mountain bike in the back of that long-termer or something like that.
Yeah, he does.
Did I dream that? Was that right?
No, that's right. Yeah, because he's got a lovely bike from a Saracen mountain bike, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'll always carry it on the inside. And I remember when I did a video during lockdown last year, COVID-19. One of the things, and we'll end up talking about this evening, I'm sure. When I bought my Mini Clubman, one of the things I spec'd on the Mini Clubman were roof bars, or roof rails rather, so that I could then fit roof bars and then have a roof-mounted cycle carrier.
Yeah.
And I did a video about fitting them, because let's face it, when you're going to do a video every day for 10 weeks, you need to think of some random subject like putting a roof rack on your car to make a video of. And he sent me a message when I just never put my bike on the roof, which is fair enough.
Yes.
So where should we start? Should we start with, I reckon, maybe the cheapest option?
Yes.
And that is to buy a cycle carrier that basically hangs on the back of your car.
Yeah. Yeah. They exist.
And I this is the first type of bike carrier I bought, actually, when I bought some mountain bikes. This is like years ago, 25 years ago. I bought a Claude Butler mountain bike. And I bought a bike carrier to put on the back of my Ford Fiesta.
Yes.
And it kind of it sat on and hooked on to basically the boot lid.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you had ratchets.
And then hooked in under the bumper.
Yeah, and you had ratchet straps to like suck it onto the back of the car.
Correct. And then if you had the really expensive one, it had lateral ones as well that hooked around the side, so it wouldn't move side to side, as well as up and down.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on those, mate, as a cycling professional?
Personally, it'd be the last thing that I'd ever put on my vehicle. And it will also be the last thing that I'd ever put my bike on my vehicle. But like you, back in 1994, on my H-Reg, so 1991 Renault Clio 1.2 RN, I think it was.
I love the way you remember the spec.
3-door. And that was my first...
Registration plate?
I want to say 191 something. I can't remember the last bit. Yeah. But that was my first proper car as a sort of 17, 18-year-old. And of course, I had no money, right? And this is, I think this is the fundamental thing. It's all about budget. So it's all very well for us to sit here in our ivory towers and say, this is what you want to fit onto your BMW M3 or in your Rolls-Royce Phantom. Yeah. But, let's be really fair about this. There are folk out there who just need to, they're a family, they've got a family bus, they need to transport, their bikes, the kids' bikes and everything else. And, there's a limited budget. So I think we've got to be really sort of open. What you've got to bear in mind about the strap-on style racks, how cars have changed over the years. So I remember, you're saying you had a Fiesta that you threw your cycle carrier onto, and I had a Renault Clio. Now, back in, whatever your Fiesta was, you remember the year of it?
1981.
1981, flipping out. Quality. Did they have cars back then?
Yeah.
So,
yes, very funny.
Was it black or white, or was it black and white? So
it was white. It was white. Actually.
It was white. So basically, if you remember cars back then, the hatchback was made of steel, and there was no plastic boot spoilers. So those little hooks that basically hooked onto the top of the hatchback just went straight onto a really pronounced steel lip. The other thing that people don't realize as well, think about panel gaps back then. So panel gaps were measured in yards, not microns. So you have plenty of space to put those hooks for the rack. But if you now put it onto a modern car, take something like a Nissan Juke, so a sports utility vehicle, right? They've got these big, deep plastic spoilers that hang off the back of the tailgate to make it look nice. The panel gaps are so good nowadays.
Sorry. Did you just say look nice and Nissan Juke in the same sentence?
I do know. I think they look great. I think they look great. I really like them.
You're just trying to avoid the comments, aren't you? Yeah.
No. I've got friends who've got one. So it's more the WhatsApp message. What are you saying about my car? No, I do. I think they look great. But if you think about most cars now, anything from like your Audi A1s, even into your Fiestas and all those sorts of things, they've got those plastic boot spoilers that hang off the back. Yeah. And just if you think about it, even if you can get the hook into the panel gap that's got that hooks onto some steel, the strap is going over the plastic spoiler, and then onto the rack you're hanging 3-4 bikes that weigh 40-50 kilos maybe across those 3-4 bikes potentially, and you're basically pulling vertically and downwards on plastic.
Yeah, it's not good.
So forget about the fact that you're going to scratch the heck out of your boot spoiler, but it can't be good for it, right?
No. And I think there's a couple of things. The fitting of the rack is important, and I think that is determined by the style and shape of your car.
Yeah.
But the two things probably to kind of point out people, I mean, I got pulled one day by the police with mine.
Yeah.
Because the problem with those rear-mounted carriers is they often obscure the number plate.
And the lights.
And the lights. And if you obscure the number plate and the lights, that is illegal and you will get pulled by the police. Yeah. So if you are mounting one of those, two things. Yeah. Well, that's actually a couple of things, really. Number one, you need to have a secondary number plate that you can put on the bikes so that people can see the unobscured number plate.
Yeah.
And that might need to be a light board with lights on the side.
Yeah.
Number two is, it's funny, my brother's a truck driver, and I remember him saying years ago, the thing that does their head in is when you've got bikes on the back and the wheels spin round.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that when you strap your bike on, the wheels can't spin round, because it's quite distracting for the vehicle following you if they're doing that.
Yes.
And then the final thing is just make sure they're securely on, because I have seen on a motorway some poor guy running down the hard shoulder picking up bits of bike off of the carriageway because his cycle carried fallen off.
Yes. Yeah. It's one of those things. If budget and convenience, whatever it might be, if having a strap-on style bike carrier is your only option, all options are null and void, and this is the only option that's left. Just don't scrimp on them. Get a really good quality one that has got a lot of adjustment points so you can get all the angles and everything spot on. But before you order anything, make sure you just look at the back of your car and think, where are the hooks going to actually physically mount? And am I actually going to be able to securely strap the rack onto the car and therefore the bikes onto the rack? But if you can avoid it...
Well, one thing I do, I mean, I put a carrier on the back of the same carrier I bought that had my Fiesta. I then kept it as my cars evolved.
Right.
I put it on the back of a Honda S2000, which was actually more straightforward than I thought. And then I bought an Audi TT. Boots? Probably, but I know.
Hashtag eek.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But then I bought an Audi TT Roadster, and the problem with that had an electronically liftable spoiler. So you need to make sure that. No, I didn't, because actually, you could have done. You could have fitted it as long as you fitted it with the spoiler raised, so that it wasn't going to foul on the carrier. But I wouldn't do that.
No. Yeah.
So there is a benefit of those carriers that sit on the back of the car, and that is from an aerodynamics point of view. and a fuel efficiency point of view, they're pretty good because the bike's sat in the kind of, they're not proud in the air. So
are they though? Because they usually, because of where they sit and how the bikes go on, you usually have the wheels to the outside of the width of the car.
Okay, but they're better than having the bikes on a roof rack.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, which we'll come on to in a moment. So the next option then, if we're sticking at the back of the car, and this is now my, if you like, evolution of bike carrying, is I then bought a tow bar mounted cycle carrier.
Yes.
And that was, I have to say, that was excellent. It was a Thule one, and Thule did both a 2-bike and a 4-bike one. I only bought the 2-bike one.
Yes.
But it was so solid. You could literally stand on it and jump up and down on it.
Yeah.
And then the really nice thing about that, it had a light bar and a number plate rack. It plugged into your power connector that you would, your towing electrics.
Yeah.
And that, it was brilliant. And then the other really cool thing was if you wanted to get into your boot, it just dropped forward, leant forward with the bike still attached. And then you could get into your boot. And I loved my tow bar mounted carry. In fact, I've still got it. Now, it wasn't a cheap thing.
No.
I think a 2-bike one was nearly 500 quid, I think.
Yes.
Off the top of my head. But they're brilliant.
And once you bought it, you buy it once.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The only problem is I actually bought there was another tow. So the tow bar mounted one, the second one I had, literally mounted onto the ball of the tow bar.
Yes.
But I did have one for a brief period of time when I had a Freelander. Yeah. And to the side of the tow bar ball was a connector, and it was like it clipped into that and was straight up, and then kind of just hung bikes off the back.
Yes.
I had one of those too, which was okay, but I preferred the ball mounted tow bar one.
Yeah. And do you know why they do the ball mounted ones predominantly?
Because I guess it's just easier, is it?
No. Well, it's one reason.
Incoming, people, incoming.
Is the fact that a tow bar mounted bike rack that can go onto the tow ball, it is then irrelevant whether you have a swan neck style tow bar, which basically just comes out from the bumper, or the type of tow bar that you were referring to on your Freelander, which is what we call a standard 2-bolt flange tow bar. So basically the tow ball...
Where do you get this from? Where?
Yeah, so basically the plate that basically fitted onto your tow bar will have been bolted in between the tow bar flange and the flange of the tow ball. So it's like sandwiched in between with the 2 bolts. Whereas if you've got a swan neck style tow bar, the only way of mounting it is to then the friction plates over the top of the tow ball itself.
Yeah. And isn't flange a great word?
Moving swiftly on.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So that, I really like that. And I've still got it now.
Yes.
Excuse me. That's not good coughing on a podcast.
Yeah.
I've still got it now. The challenge I have with it is I haven't owned a car with a tow hitch since about 2013. But I've still got the tow bar mounted rack.
Yes.
And I think the big problem is that it's fine if you've got a car with a tow hitch. I had a number of SUVs. I had a Defender, Discovery, then I had a Range Rover Sport.
Yes.
And then we bought the S4, and the S4, it didn't come with a tow hitch, and the price to have one fitted was just eye-watering.
Yes.
So I've got it, and I keep thinking about sticking it on eBay, but it's a bloke thing, isn't it? I'll think I'll keep it because one day I might have a car with a tow hitch, and I might be able to use it again.
Yes, yeah. But do you know why it's the cars are also so expensive to have tow bars fitted to them?
I have a feeling you do. You alluded to it at the end of the last podcast, but it's an interesting one because Audi quoted me like 1,600 quid to fit a tow hitch to my S4.
Yeah, Yeah. So what you can do is you can do one of two things. You can go to a tow bar fitters.
Yeah.
And just get a aftermarket tow bar, just literally fitted to your bike, and they'll wire in the electrics and do all of those sorts of things. But if you go to a main dealer, what they have to do, particularly if your vehicle is in warranty, is when you and I know this from BMW days. So we used to, when I say we, Rosie, my wife, and I, we had a 320 diesel touring. That was our first sort of proper car, which was absolutely lovely. That was in 2009. And we bought that car, and I really wanted to have a tow bar mounted rack fitted. So I got a quote for it, and they said it was going to be similar to your Audi price. It was like 1,600 to $2,000. And we went, sorry, for why?
Is it, is it coated in gold or something?
Yes. I don't need the caravan that attaches to it. I just want the bar. So, but the guy in the service department was really helpful, and he gave me the overview. He said, well, the reason being is when you factory fit the tow bar, they fit the cooling system and the alternator that is required for the engine that is then pulling the load that it is rated to. Because, of course, a vehicle just pulling its own weight, its own gross weight, is putting the engine under a X amount of load. But the moment you put, say, its towing capacity on it, which may be 1,500 kilos, 2 tons, whatever, it's obviously putting more load on the engine. So the cooling system and the alternator gets up rated as well. I think on some turbo diesels, it's also the intercooler as well. So you're not just paying for the cost of the part, but you, as in the tow bar and the towing electrics, but you're also having to uprate all the cooling system as well. And of course, they won't do one thing without the other. You can't just go in and say, but I'm just putting a bike carrier on that's 60 kilos. Because they go, no, but the problem is that, the manufacturer, the dealer or the supplier goes, but we don't know that, so they can only do it to manufacturer's spec. But that's why it's so expensive.
Yeah. I did try that with Audi. I went, look, my bike weighs 7.5 kilos, really. But anyway. So that is a big challenge. The other type of rear one, and this is on my Mini, where the towing eyes go in on the rear bumper on both my Minis, actually, there is a cycle rack you can buy from Mini that basically screws into those.
Correct. It's made cool by a company called Atera.
Again, it doesn't surprise me you knew that one. So that's quite tempting actually for me, because I could stick a bike rack on the back of my Roadster, and it's a solid mounted. I guess you'd again have to do something with the electrics for the lights and things.
They do. In fact, Mini Countryman comes with that as standard. Yeah, or they did do when I was at BMW. So if you look at an old, or as they were affectionately known, a country fella, instead of a countryman. So if you look under the bumper, under the underside of the rear bumper, you'll actually see the towing electrics. If it's had bike carrier preparation, so it's like a factory fitted electric socket that you then screw the bike rack into it. There you go, nerdy fact.
Yeah, so I if that for me, if I was carrying the bike on the outside of the car, that would be my preference. I think I know there is some aerodynamic drag, but it's not so bad. I mean, the bikes do get a bit minging in terms of, spray from the road. So you might want to put like a, Velo sock on them or something. And then the other thing I'm always mega paranoid about whenever my bike's on the outside of the car is securing it to the bike rack and securing the bike rack to the car. So that when you stop at the services, some pikey doesn't nick your bike.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's that's the same whether it's on the roof, whether it's on well, it's basically wherever the bike is on the outside of the car. You're absolutely right. It's that security aspect is important. It's also to know as well, if ever you're putting the bike on the back and you've got your bike insured, always speak to your insurance company to say, when I'm transporting my bike, at what level is it insured? So what do I have to do? How do I have to transport it? And how do I have to lock it to my bike rack for if it did get stolen, you would pay out?
Yeah. Because a lot of the bike racks, certainly the higher end ones, it may not be the strap on ones, because I know the ones we first started talking about, you'd strap the bike rack to the car, and then the bikes would literally just be strapped with ratchet straps or bungees to the rack.
Yes.
So they're not really secured in place.
No.
The tow bar mounted Thule unit I had like a clamp that went onto the crossbar, and then the clamp had a lockable key, so that you'd lock the bike to the rack, and then the rack locked to the tow bar. And I know those things are forcible.
Oh, definitely.
You might want to put an additional lock. I guess the flag you would put there is, if you use an additional lock, make sure that if I don't know, let's say you're driving to the south of France, and you use a bike chain or a bike padlock, put some padding or some protection on the frame. Otherwise, you're gonna damage the bike if you're not careful.
Well, personally, whilst driving down the road, I'd actually take it off and only put it on when you park up.
Yeah, good point.
I know it's a bit of a hassle, but you're 100% right, Peter. That can be a cause of damaging. And the other thing that's important whenever you're strapping any bike to any rack is always be sympathetic to where you're actually clamping the bike frame. So always remember that the thickness, the wall thickness of the actual tube of the bike, whether it's the down tube or the top tube, the center point of the down tube and the top tube of the bike is always the thinnest wall thickness, whether alloy or carbon. It's always the thinnest. So if you can put your clamp near to the where the top tube interfaces with the seat tube of the bike, or where the or where the down tube interfaces with the bottom bracket area, that is always the thickest part of material that you would clamp to. And always remember, don't over tighten. Yeah. So these are also really important.
Just thinking
points.
where I clamp my bench. Yeah. Okay. So. So that's hanging stuff off the back of the car. The next one then is roof rack.
Yes.
Now roof rack one, and this is how I currently carry my bike. I don't carry it on the car that often actually, but I've got roof bars on my Mini, and I've got a Thule roof mounted bike carrier. I'm a big Thule fan, by the way.
They're fantastic.
I love Thule stuff. It's just really good quality. It's not sponsored by Thule, by the way, but I generally find their stuff is brilliantly made.
Yes, it is.
So I've got a couple of Thule carriers, and their bikes stand upright, because I know you could have the bike stood upright, or you can flip them upside down and clamp them with the seat and the handlebars as well on some carriers.
Yeah, that was a bit old school.
I've not seen one of them for a long time.
No, and there's also ones that you can remove the front wheel, so it actually mounts the fork. And then
are those what would I mean? I get they always look really cool on the top of the car, and I can see the advantage of it, because the bike probably wobbles around less, but then you've got to put the wheel somewhere.
Yeah, but the reason why you did it was for people who just either can't. So if somebody's sort of transporting something like a TT bike, time trial bike, and there is nowhere to physically put the clamp around the frame, So it allows you to remove the front wheel and fork mount it, which means that you can then carry it without a problem. The other thing is that those people who are sort of paranoid about transporting carbon fibre bikes and not wanting to clamp them, then obviously they're not clamping them because you're supporting it with the fork dropout or the through axle. So they are actually really very good. But you're right. You've then got to put your wheel somewhere. But now there's also ones that just clamp the front wheel. So Keith, who you've met briefly, Peter, who works in the store, they've just got these new Thule roof-mounted carriers that actually you have to look at it on the Thule website because I can't do a descriptive on the podcast. Yeah. Well, basically, it clamps the front wheel itself, so it means that the wheel is physically clamped to the cycle carrier. There's then your little sort of ski ratchet that goes over the back wheel, but it means that the frame isn't being contacted at all. And I've seen them put the bikes on using this, and I think it took a little bit of time for them to get the little that sort of routine going of this is how it all works. So I think there was a few moments of what have we done the first couple of times that they've used them, but now they absolutely swear by them. So yeah, there's loads of roof-mounted options that you can go for.
I mean, I used them, as I said, and when I did Von 2, we drove the bikes down. We had 2 bikes on the roof, and they do move around quite a bit. I've got a pan roof in my car, which is either a good thing or a bad thing. Because it's a good thing because you can see your bike and make sure it's still there.
Yes,
but it's a bad thing because you see how much it moves around when you're doing 70 mile an hour down the motorway.
Yeah.
But as long as it's securely mounted, the biggest challenge with those though is, I mean, from a fuel efficiency point of view, it's like basically driving your car down the road with a parachute sticking out the back.
Yeah.
I mean, I read somewhere that they will increase your fuel economy or your fuel usage by 30 to 40%. They're terrible from an aerodynamics point of view.
Yeah. And it's also, particularly on a hot summer's day,
I know what's coming.
Yeah, the amount of flipping bugs on them. When you get the bike off, I mean, all on the handlebars, the cables, and they just get everywhere. But it's just, it is what it is. If you've just got a family car, you need to transport bikes. Well, you've got choices.
Yeah, and it's funny. When we had the Discovery, we had a Discovery 3, and that thing was like a cave inside. It was huge.
Yeah.
And there was only me and Tracy and the dog, and I was able to put my bike inside the car, wheels off, upside down, quite happily, and then all of our other stuff. And then the next year we went down in an S4, and there was no way that was happening, and I had to put it on the roof.
Yes.
And it's just a space thing, really.
Here's a question there.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the fuel efficiency being a problem. Genuine question now. Discovery with your bike inside versus your S4 with bike on roof.
Yeah.
What was the fuel consumption difference? There you go.
Do you know what? Well, a Discovery was on a long trip. You could get, I don't know, late 20s, I suppose.
Right.
Early 30s. The S4 was early 30s. It wasn't that different. But that's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, the big thing for me when you've got the roof-mounted ones, and this is where some of the stories come in, is it's super easy to forget the bikes are there.
Oh, post-it note. Seriously, guys, biggest bit of advice I can ever give you is have a yellow post-it note that just basically reads in Sharpie, bike on roof, and stick it where you cannot miss it on your dashboard. And the amount of people, in fact, I hope they're not listening because it was actually quite bad. where in our
Oh,
old
this sounds good.
shop,
Go on.
yeah, in our old shop,
Yeah.
oh, this was terrible. In our old shop, there was a car wash that was just out the back, like one of these mobile, not mobile, one of these hand car wash people. They were absolutely brilliant. They're not there anymore.
Yeah.
But they had this sort of like canopy that the cars went under when they were doing valeting, and it had like a metal structure for this canopy. And you know, occasionally we had people who wanted to pick the bikes up, but not have to go through the garden centre. They don't have to do now because we're right on the front. But in the old shop, you had to go through the garden centre to come into our shop. Sometimes they were just like, well, listen, I've parked my car out the back. Can I take the bike out the back so I can just load it onto the car and just off ski? And yeah, perfect, we can do that. So this gentleman picking up the brand new hybrid bike, right? Put it on the roof of his car. And the salesman who from the shop just said, by the way, just when you're driving out, just be careful. Don't forget your bike's on the roof and there's the canopy of the car wash. So he said, yeah, it's fine. Not 10 minutes later, the guy came in with a completely destroyed bike. As he drove away, he was phoning his significant other to say, I'm on my way home now, not remembering, and hit this canopy. So his 10-minute-old hybrid bike was written off before he rode it for the first time. It was awful. Our heart sank when he came back in. He saw the you know the good side of it, but my goodness, it was terrible. So
wow,
yeah,
really?
yeah. So not great.
I mean, I've seen it done. I've seen the biggest one normally is, you know, when you're going to take your bike to a bike ride, a mountain bike, let's say, and you're going to go and ride out in the countryside.
Yeah.
And you drive out into the countryside to park in a car park to then ride your bike from.
Yeah.
The vast majority of those car parks will have a height restrictor on them as you enter the car park.
Yeah.
and it's like, you know, may as well just sit there and wait for it to happen. So
yeah.
So it's I haven't done it myself. I've been in a car where it's happened. Yeah. And I've been in, and it's not pleasant.
No,
it really is.
Do you know what it's all? Do you know what else is bad for that as well? You know the VW transporters that have got the racks that sort of fold out from the back.
Yes,
that sit quite high on the on the tailgate.
Yeah.
So they don't obscure the number plate and the lights. They're quite clever. So they sit quite high above the light and the number plate. Yeah. When you're not in use, they fold up against the rear screen. And when they're in use, they fold out. You can put up to 4 bikes on them. They're quite clever. But the amount of people that forget they're in a van, so it's already quite high, and then the bikes sit proud of the roof once they're up on there. And again, we've had people who have gone into, you know, go onto the beach or something like that with these height restricting car parks and just literally clip the bikes. Yeah.
Ouch.
Yes.
So next thing then. So they're all good, all well and good ways of transporting a hybrid bike, a road bike, a mountain bike, a gravel bike.
Yes.
But if you've just bought yourself a lovely e-bike,
then
there are things to be wary of.
Yes. Indeed. So always remember, e-bikes are not heavy. They are actually the lightest bikes on the planet when taken into account power to weight ratio.
You see, Paul, you are a bit of an e-bike fan, my friend.
Wait
till the e-bike episode hits.
Indeed. So that's a little bit of a snapshot for a lovely video that's coming. But yeah, so always remember, your car will be a darn sight lighter if it didn't have an engine and a fuel tank. So don't go off on one when you're saying e-bikes are heavy. They're not. They just have an engine and a fuel tank as well as the bike. So,
however,
you still have to carry the weight.
If you are a cycle carrier, they're heavy.
They're heavy. Absolutely correct. So the average e-bike, forget about sort of these uber lightweight ones. Let's talk about the average e-bike. The average e-bike will weigh between 20 and 30 kilos, somewhere in that mix. And where people go wrong with cycle carriers, so they'll go for a cycle carrier that says that it's got a payload capacity of, say, 45 kilos. But what they don't realise is that that 45 kilos, if it's a 3-bike carrier, is divided by 3. So the individual rail weight, so 1 rail, 2 rail, 3 rails, has got a carrying capacity of a third of the 45 kilo payload capacity. So the strapping mechanism for the wheels and the clamping mechanism for the frame was only designed to, say, carry 17 to 19 kilos, which is plenty for, as you said, Peter, the vast majority of hybrid bikes and road bikes and mountain bikes, but not a 23, 24, 25 kilo e-bike. So if you are, and certainly not on the roof, because the rail weight capacity of even a good quality 2-lay roof-mounted carrier is about 19 kilos, if I remember rightly. So you can't even just take the battery out and stick it on the roof because they're still probably too heavy. So whenever you're putting an e-bike, for us, the main recommendation is always get a tow bar mounted carrier that is a tow bar mounted carrier that has got a rail weight designed for an e-bike. And again, Thule and there are other manufacturers do things like 2-bike carriers that have a 30 kilo rail weight. And that is the key. What do each rails, what does each rail, what is it rated to weight wise? That is your key information.
Yeah. And the challenge is, it's the same for me with trailers. So when we had our horse, I used to tow a horse box. So when you buy a car and you need to tow, you're always looking at what the towed weight is and the braked or unbraked tow weight is.
Yes.
And actually, for something like a horse box, there are very few things that can really legally tow a horse box. You're really talking about an SUVs.
Yes.
And just yesterday, I saw someone in a Peugeot estate car. It was like a 508 or something. Towing a horse box with a horse in it. And you look at that and go, hold on a minute. My horse box I had, it was a ton without anything in it.
Yes.
And the towed weight of that car probably isn't much more than that. And you've got a horse which probably weighs 600 kilos.
Yeah.
And you see so many people with too much weight on the back of the car.
Yes.
And that's just either a lack of understanding, it won't matter attitude.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing with bikes. People don't consider the actual safety implications of it.
Yeah.
And I guess the big challenge is if you put an e-bike on the back of a car on a carrier that's not made for it, the chances are that carrier could fail, especially if you hit a bump in the road.
Yeah.
So you've got 20 to 30 kilos of e-bike tumbling down the road at 60 mile an hour, hitting whatever's behind you. And the consequences are just not worth thinking about.
No. And I think the comments will light up with this comment.
Go for it.
But I don't apologise at all. If you put a bike on the back or roof of your car with it'll be reet attitude, it is one of the most selfish things that you could do, because it's not about the fact that may fail and cost you money by it failing and coming off, but the lives you could destroy, as you quite rightly say, by that 30 kilo, even a 20 kilo or 10 kilo road bike, if that went through the window of the car behind it, through the windscreen, it just doesn't bear thinking about. So always make sure that you check the specs.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, in my experience, I think that the police take a pretty dim view of stuff stuck on a car that's not in place correctly.
Yeah.
Actually, the type of car we haven't talked about is the suction cup ones, because I've seen those a couple of times.
Yeah.
You can the suction cup onto the roof of the car, or certainly the bit that attaches the front wheel does.
Yes. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on those?
So I've seen a few of those, and I've got a couple of customers who have got bikes who use those, because they've got one guy who's got a Mercedes CLA AMG 45 or something like that. That's the little sort of like coupe saloony thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Another one. Yes, another one. GLA.
The CLA. Yeah. A really nice car, but because it's a slightly high performance car, you can't fit a tow bar to it. And because it's a performance saloon car, you can't fit it in the boot of it. And because it's a performance car, it hasn't got roof rack points.
Yeah.
So that was well thought out. But he really liked it. So he's gone for one of these roof rack, these suction cup things. And he swears by it. He says it's absolutely fine. It's never come off, and it's worked fine. But again, I'm just one of these people that go, think about your paint work and all of those sorts of things, and denting the roof and that sort of stuff.
It can look cool. I mean, I remember a few years ago now when Team Sky, because their support vehicles were sponsored by Jaguar.
Yes,
and they for the time trial they had a Jaguar F-Type.
Yes,
V8
I remember that. Yeah,
with the Pinarello Bolide TT bike suction cupped on the back. It's like
yeah.
It was too much for me to take.
Yeah.
It was like, that's life goals right there. That's life goals.
No, that looks good. But no, you've got to bear all those things in mind. You've got this really expensive car with your really expensive bike, and do you really want to sort of either dent or scratch your paintwork or bodywork?
Yeah.
With all the forces that are going through. But listen, they've got to be type approved, as in sort of CE type approved. So clearly there's a lot of people are damn sight more clever than I am, who have got this to work. But the other thing is, this was a question that we raised the other day. If you roof's carbon fibre, so you've just done your video on M3 and M4, which have got carbon fibre roofs, and also because you've got the transverse exhaust box, I don't think you can factory fit a tow bar to those cars. Joe? Question? Yeah, but I don't think
Joe.
But I don't think you can fit a tow bar to it. I think we briefly spoke. I don't think they've got roof rack mounts on that car, but we might be wrong.
No, they haven't.
Here.
No,
they have. Okay, no. So you've got a carbon fibre roof, you've got no roof rack mounts, and you've got no tow bar ability. So if your only option is a suction cup device to transport your bike on your M3 or M4, will a suction cup, on a bonded carbon roof, what will it cope with the extra forces of air resistance on that bonded roof? And secondly, will it actually sucker itself properly to a carbon fibre roof? Question.
Do you know what? I honestly don't. If anybody knows the answer to that, I managed to get a GoPro to stick to the roof.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But it's a good question, actually. I mean, I guess the simple answer to that is you just wait for the M3 Touring to come out next year and stick your bike in the car. Because let's face it, the M3 Touring is going to be amazing.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good segue then. So put your bike in the car.
Well, my segue was going to be, and so for everyone listening, when obviously we're building this dream bike, my Bianchi Ultra XR4, and when we were planning to come up and have the build and film the build and everything, I just said to Paul, I said, I'm going to come up, I'll bring my roof rack and I'll bring it back on the roof rack. And Paul, after he'd fainted and then recovered slightly, he went, no, you're not, mate. He said, there's no chance that bike's going on the roof. It's going in the car or you're not having it.
Yeah.
So there's your final option then. The bike goes in the car.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of reasons why you would want to do that. And I know, talking to Joe, his big reason is there's a security element and a kind of performance of the car element. Because if you've got a bike rack on the roof, you are going to raise the center of gravity of the car a little bit. You're going to increase wind resistance. We joked about forgetting the bikes on the roof for going into things like height-restricted car parks, but in all fairness, the other place you might forget is when you get to a nice, funky bit of A or B road and you start giving it 10/10ths and forget there's a bike on the roof.
Yeah,
and you put extra side forces on the bike rack that it might not be designed to carry. So putting the bike in the car, for many people, is a preferred option.
Yeah.
The obvious thing to state is it depends how big your car is.
Yeah.
And it depends how big your bike is.
Yes.
Now, when we came up to you guys a couple of weeks ago to do the filming in the S3, Dan brought his bike with him and he just took the front wheel off. The video goes live on my channel on Monday. Yeah. Just took the front wheel off and the bike went in the back of the car perfectly fine.
Yes, yes. The other thing that's important as well, whenever you're putting your bike in the back of the car, always make sure that the drivetrain is facing the roof. Never, ever put your bike in the back of your car with the drivetrain facing the boot or facing the floor.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that if you've got the weight of the bike on the rear derailleur, for example, it can actually bend the derailleur hanger, which is a part of the frame, and then really knock your indexing out, or at worst, when you go into your ultimate first gear, if it's bent that much, the derailleur can then actually get caught in the spokes. Either way, it's not good. So make sure that all the drivetrain is facing the roof. That's number one. But no, you're absolutely right, Peter. And some of the worst cars that we've experienced getting these things in is flipping SUVs, right? So they're almost like reverse TARDISes. Whenever you have these people with these, like, one of the ones that really surprised me, and I'm really sorry, VW, but somebody turned up to pick a bike up with one of these new Touaregs, which is basically the same. Yeah, it's about the same size as
the Porsche Cayenne.
It's massive. It's absolutely huge until you open the boot. The aperture in the actual boot itself is so narrow because it's basically housing lots of suspension and sound deadening and carpet and all that sort of stuff, probably boombox speakers in the back and all that sort of thing, that there's actually not that much luggage space. Whereas somebody turned up the other day with a Skoda Superb Estate, and seriously, it was bigger than my living room in the back of that thing. They put the seats down and it swallowed a 58 centimetre bike like nothing else. Oh, but the biggest treat, absolutely amazing. We had a customer who bought a Project One Trek Madone Speed, which was a stunning bike as it was, and he picked it up in his brand new RS6 Avant.
Oh, the perfect bike carrier.
the perfect bike carrier for the perfect bike. And he just literally, boot went up, wheels on, and this was a 58 centimetre bike with he got pretty long legs as well, not quite as long as Pete's, but he got pretty long legs, so the saddle was quite high, and that thing swallowed it. So a big estate, I think, it would be interesting to do comparisons, but I think big estates actually have a more voluminous carrying capacity than the equivalent sized SUV.
Voluminous.
Voluminous.
That's a good word.
What a great word that is. Yes.
So one problem and one question.
Yes.
Problem is, you need to put the seats down in most cars, unless you're a really tiny bike, like a Brompton or something.
Yeah.
And so that's fine if there's only like two of you.
Yeah.
But if you've got a family, then that hampers things. But I guess if you're just going for a ride out at the weekend, then that's a bit different. Yeah. So I think if you're going away on holiday or if you had a long drive, that's when external bike mounting or bike rack of some description. Yeah. The question is, if you've got multiple bikes, if you want to put two bikes in, I guess the obvious thing is just to have some thick, I don't know, carpet or rug or something between the bikes to stop them rubbing on each other and stuff.
I would never, ever condone putting a bike on top of a bike.
Okay.
Ever.
One bike only.
One bike only. If you do, and if you get away with it, fine, no problem. And there'll be a ton of people going, oh, that Baucarino is absolutely flipping nothing. I've regularly transported 70 bikes, one on top of each other in the back of my Skoda Yeti, and I've never had a single problem. Fine, no problem. Well done, you. But every time I've seen people put bikes on top of bikes and with duvets and stuff like that in the middle, it usually does things like damages, derailleur hangers and gear systems and that sort of stuff, almost at best. So that would be my advice: is just not ever putting a bike on top of a bike.
Rather than in an SUV, you might be able to stand them up, take the wheels off, and stand them upside down, side by side.
Yeah, and there are some manufacturers of internal bike storage that, again, you'll remove your front wheel, you stand your bike up in like a people carrier. I mean, they're absolutely fantastic. In the back of a people carrier, and you actually stand them vertically. That's another option. Yeah.
Or, as we get into the end of our time, the final option is you go and buy yourself a bright orange van.
And to be honest, Peter, we could have saved our lovely listeners 57 minutes and 28 seconds and just basically said, if you want to carry bikes and people and have the best vehicle in the world for cyclists, just buy a van, the end. And saved everybody a ton of time.
I think you're a little bit biased, but so let's just explain. So you when I did my COVID-19 vlogs last year, you were one of my peddlers rides with your old van, which was adapted in the back with floor mounted clips for the forks, and wheel bag hangers and stuff, just cool as you like. And that was very cool. But your new van that you've literally picked up a couple of weeks ago is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's ace. It's absolutely flipping brilliant. So the new van, or Jasper, as because it's bright orange.
Jasper Carrot,
yeah. So it's called Jasper, and it's got Murag the cow that sits on the dashboard, and Jasper's ace. So it's a Ford Transit Custom. It's a sport version. It's just really, really nice. And I mean, you saw it when you came up, and it is a car. I mean, it everything on the dashboard.
Oh yeah,
it's a car, and you've then got this massive steel lock box that's on the back. That your bikes are inside. They're not getting any road film. They're not getting wet. They're not getting any bugs on them. The bikes are in there. They're strapped in. They're secure. You can get. I mean, we've just got a long wheelbase panel van because it's mainly, Rosie and me that's just in the van most of the time and rarely take passengers. But if you've got a family, you can get a crew van version, and for those people go, oh, but they're absolutely massive. No, they're not. If you look at the footprint of a long wheelbase transit van, it's probably smaller than a Range Rover, but with like 2/3 more space inside of it. So to actually use them and drive them and park them, they're just fantastic.
So what you're basically saying is the more serious a cyclist you get, just buy a van.
Just buy a van. Or if you're if you're a family that is an outdoors family, who, you've got multiple bikes, you've got multiple you've got multiple bikes, you've got multiple things, you've got multiple people, just it, it's definitely go and have a look at one, because so many people um, don't look at vans because they think they're old plumbers' vans and builders' vans, and they're going to be rubbish on the motorway, and they're going to be rubbish in the wind. You honestly couldn't be further from the truth. If you can, go and drive one, because a modern people carrying van is amazing.
Review coming to the Petroped YouTube channel very soon. So when I come up in the summer to finally build the Bianchi,
yeah,
I might be picking up another bike at the same time that is heavy and can't go on a normal cycle carrier.
Indeed.
For my other half.
Uh-huh.
So I think we are going to hire a van. That's the only option, really.
Yeah. It's no, that would be good. That would be really
but
good.
I found it really interesting, and I've learned, as always, every day is a school day with you, Mr. Bowker. Learned lots, and I think there are lots of options. Like all of the things we've done in this series, there's no right and wrong. There's no kind of snobbery or you've only got a hanger on the back, not a tow bar. It's none of that.
No,
it's horses for courses. It's down to budget and your car.
Yes,
but I hope we've highlighted some of the things that you need to bear in mind.
Yes.
If I was to pick 3 key points, the bike and the carrier need to be securely connected to your car.
Yes.
And you need to really make sure that's the case, that the straps aren't going to come undone, that they're mounted to safe, solid places on the car, that the bikes are mounted to the carrier correctly. So it needs to be mounted solidly. Legally, your number plate must be visible and your lights must be visible. And if they're not, you need to buy a secondary number plate and light bar and have that connected to the back of the bike.
Yeah.
And then I guess the final one is buy a van.
Yeah. No, I guess the third one. I think all your points are good ones, but I think the final third point is ensuring that the weight of your bike marries up with the maximum payload capacity of your rack, and not just the total payload capacity of your rack, but the individual rail weight capacity of your rack. So I think those are the really 3 key, really good points, which is making sure it's secure, making sure your lights and number plate are visible, but also making sure that the bike and the weight capacity of that rack is in harmony with each other. And then the fourth point is buy a van.
Go for it. Buy a van. No, a fifth point is then post it. If your bike's on the roof, post a note with the dashboard. I love that.
Posting it on the dashboard. There we go.
So anyway, guys, I'm going to draw that one to a close because it's been a brilliant chat, and I know Paul now needs to go and crash and get some sleep. But I hope you've really enjoyed that one. As I said, make sure you I'll put head over to Criterium Cycles website. They've got some great stuff on there. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. However you're listening to it, whether you're listening to it through YouTube or Spotify or Google or iTunes, because every week we will bring a chat. Bike mates talking bike tech and bike geekery.
Indeed.
And I love doing them.
Yeah, and I think also always leave reviews. I know I hear a lot of other podcasty people say that as well. Always give us thumbs up and reviews and that sort of stuff, because it helps more people find it, and that would just be absolutely great.
Yeah, share it too. If you like it, share it.
Yeah, share
it. But anyway, guys, make sure you keep tuning into the Cycle Sunday episodes that drop on the Petropod YouTube channel. We've got some amazing stuff coming soon. But I thank you very much for listening. But I'm going to sign off there. I've been Pete Greaves.
I've been Paul Bowker.
We'll see you on the next one, guys.
Ride safe.